Welcome to the deep dive. Ever stop to wonder if our desires are truly our own?
Mm.
Today, we're plunging into a really discomforting question. Could it be that maybe in some hidden corner, women are drawn to men who treat them badly?
Oof. Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's the kind of thought that might make you just, bristle, but lead in with us.
Yeah,
We've got a collection of observations here that suggest we really need to explore some unsettling aspects of attraction.
exactly. And look, we're not offering easy answers here.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's more a chance to dissect some potentially ingrained patterns in how we connect. Think of it like an excavation, maybe, digging into the subtle forces shaping our relationship.
Okay, let's dive straight into the deep end then.
Yeah,
That cushion, do women secretly prefer misogynists? It's designed to provoke, right?
absolutely. It hits a nerve.
What's your immediate reaction? Honest truth now. Is there a part of you that just recoils completely or does a little flicker of unease register? What's fueling that feeling?
That gut reaction, it tells us a lot about our conscious beliefs, the relationships we think we want.
Right, what we say we want.
But consider this. If you were consistently told, maybe in 1,000 subtle ways, that your worth depended on a certain kind of male attention,
Hmm,
could that shape what feels familiar, even, acceptable?
that's a disturbing idea. It brings to mind this sort of dark thought experiment.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where women were conditioned, really conditioned, to believe their main value was just male approval.
Okay.
Would they, on some level, maybe learn to yearn for the very restrictions that limit them? It sounds extreme, I know, but
hmm
are there echoes of that dynamic around us every day?
Well, think about the power of repetition. When a message, however unhealthy it is constantly circulating.
In the media culture?
Exactly. Through norms, even tiny interactions, it can kind of burrow its way into our subconscious expectations.
So you might intellectually reject it.
Right, you think, no, that's not me. But those ingrained patterns could still be exerting this silent influence on who you're drawn to.
I have to be honest here.
Mm.
I once found myself inexplicably drawn to a man who, well, he consistently chipped away at my confidence.
Wow.
Looking back, it's baffling, truly.
Mhm.
But at the time, it almost felt normal.
Normal.
It's
Yeah.
not something I'm proud of, but it's true.
Hmm.
Has anyone listening, ever experienced something like that?
And that personal resonance, it's so important. So many people have these quiet acknowledgments, right? These moments of recognizing a pull towards relationships that weren't nurturing.
Yeah.
It's often a dynamic we keep to ourselves, this attraction to people who seem to contradict what we consciously say we want.
And it's woven into our stories, isn't it? Our narratives. We
Yeah.
champion equality, sure, but how many beloved romance stories hinge on a woman fixing a flawed, often difficult man?
Oh, constantly. The tortured antihero is practically a romantic staple. What is the underlying appeal there?
Is it the challenge?
Well, these narratives, they can both reflect and reinforce certain societal scripts, right?
Uh-huh.
The idea that a woman's love can transform this damaged man, it seems empowering on the surface.
Yeah, like my love is powerful.
Exactly, but it can also subtly validate an initial imbalance of power.
Yeah.
It sort of suggests the struggle itself has some inherent value.
Think about how this plays out online right now.
Yeah.
How often does a woman's post get way more visible because she's responding to negative or even harassing comments from men?
Right. It's like the conflict itself generates attention. What does that dynamic tell us about where value and visibility actually lie?
It's a weird kind of currency.
It really highlights a concerning dynamic where negative interactions can, unfortunately, translate into more visibility in certain digital spaces. It's not about a conscious preference for negativity, obviously,
agree.
but it reveals how attention, even when it's totally unwelcome, can become a form of social currency.
So this raises a really difficult question. Could the constant undercurrent of subtle and sometimes not so subtle misogyny have actually warped our perceptions of attraction?
Warped.
Could we have become so accustomed to it that it subtly shapes what feels familiar, maybe even magnetic?
It's a disturbing possibility, but one we have to consider. I mean, repeated exposure to any consistent stimulus can recalibrate our baseline expectations.
So if negativity or dismissiveness becomes just the background noise,
It could, over time, skew our sense of what's normal or even, desirable in a relationship. It's insidious.
I remember a woman I knew who left a genuinely kind and supportive partner. Really good guy.
Okay.
For someone who constantly criticized her reasoning, he challenges me.
The challenge.
Or maybe it was, he makes me feel like I have to earn his attention. The distinction felt incredibly thin. What is going on there?
Well, that feeling of needing to be challenged can be complicated.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might reflect a genuine desire for personal growth. Fair enough. But it can also mask a deeper, maybe unconscious need for validation that only comes through overcoming obstacles.
Even obstacles you kind of create within the relationship itself.
Precisely, like needing the struggle to feel the reward.
This feels like a moment for some really honest self-reflection for you listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
When you find yourself drawn to a strong man, okay, is that attraction rooted in genuine admiration for his character? Or maybe in a deeply ingrained expectation of male dominance?
Ooh, good question.
Take a moment. Channel your inner Socrates,
Mm,
Question the very foundation of that assumption. What does strength truly mean to you and a partner?
exactly. What qualities do you immediately associate with strength? Is it real self-assurance and respect for others?
No.
Or is it something that carries a hint of control, maybe superiority? Unpacking those definitions is absolutely key to understanding your own attractions.
We've all heard the saying that familiarity breeds contempt. Okay, fine. But what if, for some people, familiarity with being consistently undervalued cultivates a perverse kind of comfort?
A twisted comfort.
Yeah, it's a bleak thought, I know. But could there be a twisted sense of safety in the predictable sting of being seen as less?
Absolutely. Familiarity, even with really negative patterns, can create a sense of predictability.
In a chaotic world.
Right, it's a known quantity, and sometimes the fear of venturing into the unknown, even if it promises something healthier, that fear can be a powerful deterrent. Staying with what you know, even if it hurts.
And think historically. For centuries, across so many societies, women's roles were largely defined and dictated by men.
Undeniably.
Could the echoes of that historical conditioning still resonate within our desires today? Are we, on some fundamental level, still operating under blueprints laid down generations ago?
The sheer weight of historical conditioning, you just can't overstate it. For countless generations, women navigated a world where their value was often intrinsically linked to male approval or defined within these male-centric frameworks.
So it's likely.
It's highly probable that remnants of those deeply ingrained dynamics still subtly shape our subconscious expectations and attractions.
Yeah. Okay, take a deep breath with us for a second. Have you ever found yourself intrigued by someone who is consistently dismissive or aloof?
A cool, detached type.
Yeah. Did that disinterest ever feel like some kind of profound depth, as if they held some secret you just had to unlock?
That perception of dismissiveness as depth, it often arises from misinterpreting what real self-assurance looks like.
How so?
Someone who is truly secure in themselves doesn't need to project aloofness.
Mm.
In reality, that very disinterest can be a massive red flag for emotional unavailability.
Okay, you might scoff at the term daddy issues, but let's be brutally honest here.
Uh-oh.
How many times have you unconsciously sought approval from men who, in some subtle way, mirrored dynamics from your early paternal relationships?
It's an uncomfortable question, for sure.
But those foundational bonds, they often carve really deep grooves, don't they?
They absolutely do. Our earliest relationships, especially with primary caregivers, lay down powerful templates for our relational patterns later in life.
So we might be drawn to.
We might unconsciously find ourselves drawn to partners who echo those initial dynamics, even the less healthy ones. It can be an attempt to somehow resolve or just repeat familiar emotional landscapes.
Here's a stark choice to consider, just hypothetically.
Okay.
Would you rather be in a relationship with someone who consistently praises your intellect, values your opinions, or someone who occasionally makes you feel inadequate, but then showers you with intense, almost possessive affection?
Wow. Yeah.
Even the hypothetical answer to that reveals something fundamental about your underlying needs. What pulls you more, the steady praise or the intense swings?
That stark hypothetical, it forces us to confront that potential conflict, doesn't it? Between our need for consistent validation and maybe our craving for intense emotional connection.
Right.
It compels us to examine whether we prioritize stable, positive regard, or maybe the dramatic highs and lows that can come with possessiveness.
Think about pop culture. How often are female characters saved or ultimately validated by a deeply flawed, even toxic male lead?
All the time. The brooding vampire, the emotionally unavailable billionaire. These tropes are everywhere. Why do these dynamics resonate so powerfully? Why are they romanticized so often?
It's a good question.
Well, the media we consume plays a huge role in shaping our perceptions of romance and what's healthy.
Hmm.
The recurring narrative of the troubled guy being the object of a woman's desire can inadvertently normalize unhealthy dynamics. It reinforces that subconscious idea that a woman's love has this magical power to redeem a damaged man.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Some quick fire introspection for everyone listening.
Right.
Have you ever felt an inexplicable pull towards someone who was clearly emotionally unavailable?
Mm.
Did that unavailability feel strangely
Mm.
familiar? And did you find yourself working harder, like really striving to earn their fleeting attention?
That pull towards emotional unavailability, it can stem from a lot of things.
Yeah.
Maybe a fear of real intimacy or an unconscious repetition of past relationship patterns where emotional connection was scarce.
And the effort.
Well, the effort invested can create this false sense of significance or even reinforce a belief that love has to be earned through struggle.
I used to preach self-love, really believed in it. Yet there was a time when I genuinely believed a man's jealousy was like a testament to his deep devotion.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a common one.
Looking back, that's such a jarring contradiction. Where does that kind of twisted logic even come from?
That misconception often originates from societal messages that mistakenly equate intense emotion, even negative ones like jealousy, with passion or genuine care.
But it's not.
In reality, jealousy is often a manifestation of insecurity and a desire for control, not a sign of true affection. Big difference.
A friend once confessed to me completely candidly. She said, the genuinely nice guys just felt boring.
Heard that before.
The ones who kept me constantly on edge, those were the ones who made me feel truly alive. That's such a raw admission. What's going on there psychologically? Why can chaos sometimes feel more compelling than calm?
That feeling of being intensely alive in the middle of chaotic relationships,
Yeah.
it can be linked to what Carl Jung talked about with the shadow self.
The repressed parts.
Yeah, the unacknowledged aspects of our own psyche. Unstable relationships can trigger these intense emotional responses, creating a temporary illusion of vitality. While the quiet security of a healthy relationship might feel unfamiliar, maybe even subconsciously threatening.
So sometimes the inherent drama of a turbulent relationship can feel more real than peace, simply because we've been conditioned somehow to equate struggle with love. It's almost as if, subconsciously, we believe that if it's not difficult, it's not truly worthwhile. Where does that deeply ingrained belief system come from?
It can be learned behavior, definitely, a byproduct of societal narratives that romanticize overcoming huge obstacles in love.
Like in the movies.
Or even just witnessing unhealthy relationship patterns during our formative years. It creates this powerful, often unconscious link between difficulty and authenticity in relationships.
Think about classic fairy tales for a moment. How often is the quintessential Prince Charming actually portrayed as genuinely kind and empathetic?
Good point.
Or is he just powerful and maybe a bit entitled? Does the story usually focus more on his status and his ability to rescue the princess than on his actual character?
Fairy tales, while they seem harmless, often subtly reinforce those traditional power dynamics. The archetypal Prince Charming is frequently defined by his high social status and his ability to rescue the damsel.
Not by being, a decent person.
Exactly, not by demonstrable kindness or emotional intelligence or genuine respect for her autonomy.
Okay, another moment for brutal honesty with yourself right now. Listening. Have you ever stayed in a relationship where you were consistently, even subtly belittled?
Oof.
Fueled by this underlying hope that you could eventually prove your worth to that person? It's a deeply vulnerable question, I know, but it's critical for self-awareness.
That persistent desire to prove your inherent worth in a relationship where you're consistently made to feel inadequate, it speaks to a potentially deep-seated insecurity.
And it's a cycle.
It often creates a self-perpetuating cycle where you're constantly seeking external validation that the other person is fundamentally unwilling or maybe unable to provide.
I knew this fiercely independent woman, really got her stuff together.
Okay.
But she consistently found herself in relationships with partners who desperately needed fixing.
The fixer dynamic.
Yeah. Was she genuinely empowering them, or was she maybe subconsciously reenacting a familiar caregiving dynamic she'd known before? It's such a razor-thin line sometimes.
Right. Oh, the fixer dynamic is incredibly complex. While it might look like it stems from a desire to nurture and support.
Which sounds good.
Right. It can also be rooted in a less conscious need to feel perpetually needed. or just an unconscious repetition of familiar relationship patterns where one person always takes on the role of caregiver or rescuer.
Now let's flip the script entirely for a second. Imagine a hypothetical scenario where men were constantly bombarded with the message that their value hinged solely on a woman's desire for them.
Okay, turning the tables.
Do you think some men in that reverse dynamic might learn to distrust kindness and instead crave a different, maybe more challenging form of attention? It's a thought experiment that reveals some uncomfortable truths about human psychology, I think.
That role reversal, it powerfully illustrates how societal conditioning can profoundly impact what we come to see as valuable or desirable.
Yeah.
If external validation, regardless of its emotional tone, becomes the primary measure of self-worth, it can inevitably lead to a distortion of healthy attraction, no matter who it is.
You might consciously say, I desire a partner who treats me with unwavering respect.
Sure.
Okay? But take a moment to really examine that desire. Do you truly, deep down, believe you inherently deserve that respect without having to constantly earn it or fight for it?
Ah, the deserving part.
There's a profound difference between intellectually wanting something and deeply believing you are unconditionally entitled to it.
That internal sense of deserving is absolutely fundamental. If we don't genuinely believe at our core that we are worthy of respect,
Then what?
we might subconsciously gravitate towards relationships that mirror that underlying lack of self-worth, even if those relationships are ultimately damaging.
So for centuries, women have navigated a social landscape largely shaped by male dominance. We know this. Could our current patterns of attraction still carry subtle echoes of those long-held survival strategies? Have we, on some subconscious level, adapted to seek out certain types of relational dynamics, even if those dynamics aren't fulfilling anymore in a more equitable world?
It's highly plausible. Those historical survival mechanisms where aligning with male power structures was often just a necessity
Right, for safety resources.
could have left subtle yet persistent imprints on our relational instincts. These aren't necessarily conscious preferences, but maybe deeply ingrained patterns of behavior and attraction.
Okay, here's a potentially unsettling thought. Maybe it's not about secretly preferring misogynists at all.
Go on.
Perhaps it's more about subconsciously recognizing a pattern of behavior that has been so deeply ingrained in our society for so long
Uh-huh.
that any significant deviation from that familiar pattern feels inherently unsettling, maybe even wrong. It's less about a desire for mistreatment and more about a twisted sense of familiarity.
Precisely. I think that's a really important distinction. It's less about a deliberate preference for mistreatment and more about the subtle discomfort that can arise when we encounter relationship dynamics that deviate significantly from what we've become accustomed to.
Even if what we're accustomed to is unhealthy?
Exactly. Even if those familiar patterns are ultimately unhealthy and unfulfilling, the unfamiliar can feel risky.
What if your ingrained idea of a strong man is, in reality, simply a man who reinforces the familiar power imbalance you've always subconsciously known?
Ooh.
What if that deeply ingrained familiarity is being misconstrued as genuine strength or, desirable dominance?
That's a critical insight. If our unconscious understanding of strength is just inextricably linked to dominance or control,
Which it might be, from all the messages we get.
then we might inadvertently misinterpret healthy equality and mutual respect as a lack of strength in a partner. We might see kindness as weakness.
Have you ever found yourself feeling strangely safer in a familiar storm, like a relationship you understood, however turbulent it was, than in an unfamiliar calm?
Safety in the storm.
That unsettling pull of the familiar can be an incredibly powerful force, even when that familiarity is inherently damaging to our well-being.
That feeling of a perverse kind of safety in the familiar, even if it's consistently turbulent and unhealthy, it speaks to our fundamental human tendency to seek out what we know,
Even if it's bad for us.
however detrimental it might ultimately be. The uncharted territory of a truly healthy relationship can sometimes feel more threatening than a known discomfort.
Here's a potent idea to really wrestle with. The cage doesn't necessarily need to be locked from the outside for you to forget that you possess the key.
Wow. Yeah.
Often, those internalized limitations, the beliefs we hold about what we deserve, can be far more powerful than any external constraints.
That's a powerful metaphor for the insidious impact of internalized beliefs and deeply ingrained patterns. Even when external barriers are removed and healthier options become available,
We stay stuck.
we can still remain bound by our own self-limiting beliefs and ingrained relational expectations. The cage is inside.
Remember our earlier discussion about familiarity potentially breeding a twisted form of comfort? What if that comfort manifests as the subtle, almost imperceptible silence of perpetually being seen as less, a perverse acceptance of constantly being underestimated?
That silence, it can feel deceptively peaceful, can't it? Because it inadvertently confirms an existing internal narrative, however negative and self-deprecating that narrative might be.
You don't have to challenge it.
Exactly. It allows us to avoid the often uncomfortable work of challenging those deeply held, yet ultimately damaging beliefs about our own worth.
What if your deep longing for a protector figure is, at its core, a subconscious acceptance of your own inherent vulnerability in a world that doesn't always readily value female strength and autonomy?
That's complex.
Is that a genuine desire for care and support, which is healthy, or is it perhaps a subtle resignation to a predetermined, maybe weaker role?
The desire for a protector figure can be incredibly complex, you're right. While it can certainly stem from a genuine and healthy need for support and care,
Which we all need sometimes.
absolutely, but it can also be rooted in an internalized belief that women are inherently more vulnerable and therefore require male protection, potentially undermining their own sense of agency and strength.
So, which is ultimately more damaging. To be overtly oppressed by external forces,
Hmm.
or to internalize the insidious belief that you inherently deserve less.
Oof, that's a heavy one. Both inflict profound harm, obviously.
Right.
But that internalized belief can be particularly challenging to overcome because it operates so deeply beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. It becomes part of your identity.
Yeah.
Internalized depression can be particularly insidious because it fundamentally shapes our self-perception and our expectations of what we're entitled to. This can make it significantly harder to recognize and actively challenge external forms of oppression and mistreatment when they happen.
We consume narratives of damsels in distress so readily, so consistently in our culture.
Still, after all this time,
What does that pervasive storytelling really say about our underlying expectations, both for ourselves and for the prescribed roles of men in our lives?
the widespread prevalence of the damsel in distress narrative, it can subtly reinforce the idea that women are often passive recipients of male action and validation,
Waiting to be rescued.
essentially. And this can, in turn, unconsciously shape our expectations of relationships and our own agency within them.
Cast your mind back to your younger self, absorbing all those countless messages about your inherent worth.
Okay, childhood.
Did those messages come with unspoken conditions attached? Were you valued simply for who you were, like in your entirety, or primarily for meeting certain external expectations or adhering to specific roles?
The messages we receive during our formative years about our worth, they can have such a lasting and profound impact on our self-esteem and the choices we make in our adult relationships.
Conditional love messes you up.
Experiencing conditional love can often lead to a lifelong pattern of seeking external validation and struggling with feelings of inadequacy. It sets a really tough template.
Take a moment now to honestly reflect on the relationships you've consistently admired throughout your life. Could be family, friends, public figures.
Relationships you looked up to.
Were they truly partnerships of equals, characterized by mutual respect and shared power? Or was there maybe a discernible imbalance, with one person consistently holding more authority or influence? Be brutally honest with yourself about the dynamics you've subconsciously admired.
Examining the relationships we admire can often reveal our own unconscious biases and deeply held expectations about power dynamics and about the traditional roles people tend to adopt in partnerships.
It's a mirror.
It's a powerful tool for understanding our own relational patterns, yeah.
You might find yourself being incredibly understanding of men's flaws and shortcomings. We
Yeah.
hear this a lot. Oh, he's just...
Right, making excuses.
But take a closer look at that understanding. Is it genuine empathy, rooted in compassion and recognizing shared human imperfection? Or is it perhaps a subtle form of resignation? Resignation to a certain standard of behavior.
Is it true acceptance or simply a lowering of your own expectations? That's the core question.
Yeah.
There's a crucial distinction between genuine empathy and mere resignation. Empathy involves compassionate understanding of someone's struggles. Resignation often implies just passively accepting a less than ideal situation as the inevitable norm, recognizing that difference is vital for maintaining healthy boundaries.
A woman once confided in me with this disturbing conviction: he only yells at me because he truly cares.
Oh, no, that's That's classic rationalization.
What kind of twisted version of care leaves you feeling emotionally bruised, even if the wounds aren't physically visible? It's such a deeply troubling rationalization.
Rationalizing abusive or disrespectful behavior as a manifestation of care is profoundly dangerous. It's a distortion of reality.
Right.
It serves to normalize mistreatment and tragically reinforces the false idea that negative emotions like anger or control are somehow inextricably intertwined with genuine affection. They're not.
Okay, so what is the crucial dividing line between a man being confidently assertive and crossing over into being overtly controlling? Feels blurry sometimes.
It can feel blurry, yeah.
And maybe more importantly, who in our society typically gets to define and enforce that boundary? The answer has huge consequences for how we experience relationships.
The critical distinction between healthy assertiveness and unhealthy control often lies in a fundamental respect for the other person's autonomy, their boundaries, their individual needs.
And who defines it?
Well, the power to define and interpret that boundary is often heavily influenced by prevailing societal norms and, let's be honest, entrenched gender dynamics.
You might believe you are inherently attracted to a man's perceived confidence.
Okay.
That bold energy.
Yeah. But take a closer look. How often is that outward display of confidence simply a carefully constructed mask for underlying insecurity and a deep-seated need to exert dominance over others?
Ah, the mask of confidence.
It can be a subtle but absolutely crucial difference to recognize.
It reminds me of Nietzsche, actually. You know, his ideas on the will to power.
How so?
Well, that drive can manifest in so many ways, overt and covert. What initially looks like unwavering confidence can sometimes be, like you said, a facade, hiding deeper insecurities and this powerful, often unconscious, need to assert control and dominance.
So maybe the central question we should be asking isn't whether women secretly prefer misogynists,
Hmm?
but rather whether we have been subtly conditioned through countless societal messages and experiences to simply accept their presence, to see it as a normal, even inevitable part of the relational landscape.
That subtle shift in perspective, it has the power to change everything, doesn't it?
I think so.
Shifting the focus from inherent preference to the powerful influence of conditioning allows us to acknowledge the profound impact of ingrained norms and expectations. It reframes the issue in a much more constructive and maybe empowering light.
Consider this carefully. Who ultimately benefits from the perpetuation of the idea that women secretly desire what ultimately harms them?
Right. Cui bono? Who benefits?
Take a moment to really consider the wider implications of that particular narrative.
Well, the insidious idea that women harbor a secret desire for mistreatment can conveniently serve to deflect responsibility away from harmful behavior
Lets the perpetrators off the hook.
and actively maintains existing power imbalances within society. It's a narrative that ultimately protects the status quo. Very convenient for some.
I used to mistakenly believe I was irresistibly drawn to passion in relationships. That's what I called it.
The intense feeling.
Yeah. It took me a long time, too long, to realize that what I was actually drawn to was the chaotic push and pull of instability.
Ah, mistaking chaos for passion.
That constant volatility mistakenly felt like a deep connection, but it was anything but.
Yeah.
Have you ever confused intensity with genuine intimacy?
Confusing the heightened emotions of instability and anxiety with the authentic connection of genuine passion is remarkably common. So many people do this.
Why?
The dramatic highs and lows of a turbulent relationship can create this false sense of excitement, this distorted illusion of deep connection. Often it's effectively masking underlying insecurity and fundamentally unhealthy dynamics.
Okay, maybe there is a relationship dynamic in your past, or perhaps even your present, that you have come to accept as normal. But if you were to objectively describe it out loud to someone else,
Like really spell it out.
yeah, it would sound utterly terrifying. Take a quiet moment to really reflect on that possibility.
Bringing those normalized yet potentially unhealthy patterns of behavior into the clear light of objective description, that can be a profoundly powerful first step
Towards what?
towards truly recognizing their harmful nature and initiating the necessary process of change. You have to see it clearly first.
Have you ever felt an almost compulsive need to constantly prove your worth and value to a partner who already fundamentally saw you as less than?
That feeling of constantly auditioning.
Yes. That relentless striving for external approval can be utterly exhausting and, in the end, often proves to be completely futile.
That persistent need to constantly validate your inherent worth in the eyes of someone who already holds a diminished perception of you. It's often deeply rooted in low self-esteem.
And seeking validation outside yourself.
Exactly. A desperate search for external validation. Tragically, this validation is often the very thing that the other person is unwilling or simply incapable of providing. You're chasing a ghost.
Perhaps attraction isn't always a fully conscious and rational choice.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not like choosing soup off a menu.
Right. It's messier than that.
Maybe it's also a powerful reflection of the broader societal currents. We are constantly swimming in the subtle and not so subtle messages that continuously shape our desires and expectations, often without our explicit awareness.
Our attractions are the result of a complex, often unconscious interplay. It's our individual personal experiences mixed with the pervasive influence of wider societal conditioning.
So recognizing that.
Recognizing the significant impact of these broader cultural currents is absolutely crucial for gaining a deeper understanding of our own deeply ingrained relational patterns. You can't separate yourself from the context.
Are you actively seeking a genuine partner for a relationship built on mutual respect and equality? Or are you, perhaps unconsciously, seeking a form of external validation for a worth that you have been subtly taught to doubt throughout your life?
Oof, that's a fundamental question we all need to ask ourselves. With unflinching honesty,
Yeah.
understanding the core underlying needs that are truly driving our relationship choices is absolutely essential for building healthy and ultimately fulfilling partnerships.
Are you coming from a place of wanting connection?
Right. A genuine desire for connection and mutual growth. Or are we primarily trying to fill a void created by pre-existing feelings of self-doubt and inadequacy? Big difference in motivation.
Okay. If you were to honestly tally up every significant romantic relationship you've ever been in,
Oh boy, the relationship resume.
and every single one of those partners has, in their own way, subtly diminished your sense of self-worth, what might that pattern reveal about your own internal compass,
Yeah,
your deeply held beliefs about what you deserve?
it's a harsh question, I know.
But profoundly necessary for genuine self-reflection.
Recognizing a recurring pattern of consistently choosing partners who ultimately leave you feeling diminished, that can serve as a powerful signal. A wake-up call.
To do what?
To examine your own fundamental sense of self-worth and the level of disrespect you have, perhaps unknowingly, come to tolerate in your intimate relationships.
You cannot effectively break free from a cycle of unhealthy relationship patterns if you don't first acknowledge, with complete honesty, that you are currently within that very cycle.
Denial is powerful.
Awareness, as always, is the critical first step and often the most challenging one on the path toward meaningful and lasting change.
Acknowledging the existence of unhealthy patterns, even when those patterns feel strangely familiar or maybe even comfortable, that's the crucial initial step.
Wow.
It's what lets you actively disrupt those cycles and consciously create space for developing healthier and more fulfilling connections. You have to see it to change it.
Imagine for a moment that the very next person you date treats you with unwavering respect.
Absolute equality, genuine kindness from the very beginning.
Okay, the healthy scenario.
Would that feel immediately natural and comfortable? Or would it perhaps feel strangely unfamiliar, maybe even a little unsettling?
Would kindness feel weird?
That potential discomfort could be incredibly telling about your underlying expectations.
That potential feeling of discomfort in the face of consistently healthy and respectful treatment? It can starkly highlight just how accustomed we might have inadvertently become to less than ideal dynamics.
Right.
It suggests that genuine equality and unwavering respect might feel unfamiliar simply because they deviate so significantly from our established, albeit unhealthy, norms. It's like your system flags it as wrong because it's different.
Your ability to tolerate disrespect in a relationship is not some kind of virtue. It's not a badge of honor.
No, definitely not.
It is, more often than not, a deeply ingrained spar. Let that profound realization truly sink in for a moment. Tolerating disrespect in any form is not a testament to your strength or resilience. It's often a direct consequence of past experiences that have unfortunately lowered your expectations of how you fundamentally deserve to be treated. It's learned helplessness, almost.
Now imagine your future daughter, maybe years from now, asking you with genuine curiosity why you accepted less than you truly deserved in your own relationships.
Wow. That future conversation.
What honest answer will you be able to give her? That vision of your future self and the lessons you want to impart, that can be a powerful and unexpected motivator for profound personal change. right now.
Considering the long-term impact of our current choices on future generations, yeah, that can provide a powerful and deeply personal incentive to actively challenge ingrained unhealthy patterns and consciously strive towards building and maintaining healthier, more equitable relationships in our own lives, for them and for us.
Perhaps the very first step towards cultivating truly healthy and fulfilling love in your life is simply acknowledging, with courageous honesty, the unhealthy and ultimately damaging patterns that you might have unknowingly embraced and normalized over time.
Just seeing them.
It's about bravely bringing those hidden shadows into the clear light of conscious awareness.
Acknowledging our own potential complicity, even if it was entirely unconscious, in perpetuating unhealthy relationship patterns. That's an absolutely essential step towards fostering genuine personal growth
And building something better.
and creating a solid foundation for building truly healthy and mutually respectful connections with others. It starts with that honesty.
There was a time in my own life when I mistakenly mistook the roller coaster of intense anxiety for genuine romantic attraction.
We talked about confusing chaos and passion.
Yeah, the constant chaos and uncertainty somehow felt like a deep and meaningful connection. It was such a deeply confusing and ultimately damaging equation to subscribe to. Have you ever made a similar miscalculation?
Confusing the turbulent, often overwhelming emotions of anxiety with the secure foundation of genuine romantic attraction is, like we said, surprisingly common.
But true connection is.
True and lasting connection is ultimately built on a bedrock of mutual trust, consistent security, and unwavering respect, not on the constant uncertainty and emotional upheaval of chaos. It feels different, calmer.
We have all, in our own ways, navigated these often murky and treacherous waters of attraction and relationships. Everyone listening has stories.
It's universal.
Simply admitting that a powerful undertow of societal conditioning and ingrained patterns exist is often the very first step towards learning to swim free. We are all in this together, really grappling with these incredibly complex and deeply personal dynamics.
And recognizing that these are indeed shared human experiences, it can foster a powerful sense of community. It can encourage more open and honest conversations about these often taboo topics,
Which helps everyone.
ultimately paving the way for greater understanding and collective growth, less shame, more honesty.
Remember our earlier exploration of whether familiarity could breed that twisted kind of comfort?
Yeah, the perverse comfort.
What if that comfort is most insidious when it manifests as the low, almost imperceptible hum of constantly being subtly underestimated?
Like background radiation.
Exactly. A pervasive undercurrent in your relationships that you have over time unconsciously learn to simply tune out.
That subtle yet persistent feeling of being consistently undervalued,
Mhm.
it can unfortunately become normalized, like you said, background noise in our relational landscape.
Making it harder to spot.
Significantly harder to consciously recognize, actively challenge, and ultimately transcend its damaging effects on our self-esteem and relationship choices. You stop noticing the hum.
Okay, here is the mic drop moment. The core truth we've been circling this whole time.
All right, let's hear it.
The most profoundly radical act a woman can commit in our society is to truly, unequivocally believe, deep down in her bones, that she inherently deserves to be treated as a complete and equal human being.
Wow, yeah, that's powerful.
Let that powerful realization truly resonate within you, believing you deserve equality, fundamentally.
That unwavering and deeply held belief in one's own intrinsic and equal worth. It's not merely a personal conviction, it is, in fact, a powerful catalyst for profound change.
Well, personally,
And across the broader landscape of society, it starts with that core belief.
let that thought settle within you. And if it evokes a flicker of discomfort or maybe recognition, perhaps consider listening to this again.
Definitely.
This has been a challenging but hopefully illuminating conversation. And these deeply ingrained ideas, they often require time and repeated reflection to truly take hold.
Absolutely. These are complex and deeply personal issues. Revisiting these challenging questions with an open mind can often lead to even deeper levels of self-awareness and a more nuanced understanding of the subtle forces that shape our lives.
So if this deep dive into the complexities of attraction has resonated with you in any way, if it has sparked even the faintest flicker of recognition within your own experiences,
Please share it. Please consider sharing it with someone else in your life who might also benefit from questioning their own deeply ingrained relationship patterns. Let's work together to make these crucial questions a little louder, for all of us.
Sharing these kinds of conversations can create a really valuable ripple effect. It encourages broader self-reflection and fosters a more open dialogue about these incredibly important and often unspoken aspects of our lives.
This was the deep dive. We don't give you easy answers.
We just made the questions a little louder.